So this panel, we have Ajay as the moderator. We have Andreas from Ontario Centers of Excellence. So he is a development manager there. And also we have a Dr. Ikjot from University of Windsor to join.
Thanks again, Brian. Thanks again, Ikjot, and thank you very much, Andreas, for doing this. And before we begin, I'm going to give each one of you a quick opportunity to talk a little bit about your favorite subjects yourselves. So we'll start with you, Ikjot. Tell us a little bit about you, your work, and what you do.
Yeah. So thank you so much for having me here. So I worked on my research recently, and I was involved in V2X security, which is vehicle to everything, and connected vehicles, the network of the vehicles. So it's more like what you'd explained. I would say it's Internet of Vehicles. It's a subset of Internet of Things. So I do understand whatever you said, it's directly applying to whatever I have seen in many years, what's evolving and happening in auto sector. So that's one of the vertical I was closely working with. I was looking for the privacy and assessment. How does that work? And in the current standards, what are some of the issues with the privacy in the design and also in the credential management system? So that's what I was looking for. And I have done a little bit research also on the Canvas side and the in-vehicle security. And I'm moving into now in connected and autonomous vehicle overall as a holistic point of view to understand how does that impact overall when we move forward in the higher levels of autonomy.
Excellent. That's a very, very interesting topic. It's one that I'm very interested in personally as well. And I'm looking forward to diving into some more of that later on. Andreas, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you. And thank you also to Brian for having me on this panel tonight. So my name is Andreas Waller. I'm the Business Development and Commercialization Manager for OCE, Ontario Centers of Excellence. We are a nonprofit organization that works to build prosperity through innovation. And one of our main things that we do is to connect our many great universities with the different companies that are in our province in order to maximize the outcome of the research that is being done in applied research, but also to connect companies to potential partners to drive the economy. And I think in this session, in this view, IoT and cybersecurity is increasingly important part of every innovation that we look into. So I really appreciate being part of this panel.
Well, we're lucky to have you. Thank you very much, Andreas. So let's stay with you for a second. Let's start with the basics. What do you feel are the top trends as it pertains specifically to IoT, verticals, industries, lines of businesses that are most impacted? Let's hear your thoughts and put it into a COVID-19 context as well, if you could.
Right. So in my conversations with business leaders, IoT is often aligned with the 5G communications tech space. Early adopters are already operating in the IoT area, and advanced manufacturing and automation are now catching up. So my organization, OCE's vision is to create prosperity through innovation. And in our advanced technology platform, we have 3 Encore 5G test beds, as well as 6 regional technology development sites for the Autonomous Vehicle Innovation Network, also known as AVEN. And this is where use cases of IoT are being formed for and by the industry. And as 5G network capabilities are built up, we will see further transformation to advanced manufacturing and the precision agriculture industry as well. So COVID-19 has really highlighted the need for industries to examine and minimize disruption. This has influenced conversations regarding strategy and business approaches. So in manufacturing, there have been many factors that have contributed to the move to automation over the last decade, but COVID-19 has heightened the urgency, accelerating the use of AI, machine learning, and IoT. As companies move from just-in-time to just-in-case supply chain approaches, governments are now speaking about initiatives to reshore its production. And to stay competitive, increasing automation in operations and utilizing our IoT is a major trend. So IoT technology is being implemented into complex industrial environments as part of digital transformation strategies. So the goal here is to streamline operations and increase productivity across the value chain. A KPMG study recently cited that 2/3 of CEOs claim agility is the new currency of business, and businesses worry if they are too slow, it will have a negative impact on their business. It should also be mentioned from a business perspective, cost is still a primary consideration. The most efficient and secure IoT solutions are going to add significant cost to companies in the short run. So therefore, it's very important that they see the value, that value offsets the cost.
Tremendous insight. And your point about IoT really all about being speed to market, right? And not just building a resilient architecture, but rather getting this thing done quickly and get it onto the market as soon as possible, rather than worry about the nuances of security is well made, right? I mean, don't worry, be crappy, right? That's effectively the ethos by a lot of IoT manufacturers. Ikjot, why don't you tell us a little bit about some of the trends and things that you are concerned about as it pertains to IoT?
So my concerns are basically when the design, I looked for the design, like the system design, and saw the flaws there with the emerging tech, right? So I was working with one of the use cases, but I can definitely imagine, because it's a plethora. You have so many kinds and so many types of industries getting into IoT. Now you have so many manufacturers that they might be looking for some sort of baseline, some sort of standards, regulations around it, but that's the problem. I think it's chicken and egg problem. They're trying to look for something. That happened to in this sector that I'm working in. We go to privacy officers, ask them what are some of the things that we need to take care of. What kind of information do you think is private or personal information? And then they would say, what can go wrong in the system? Is there some sort of regulation? And then it's like a back and forth, and we would not be able to get the answer, I think. And they would say, "Will," as you mentioned, somebody asked you the question that if something happens, where should I go? You said privacy commissioner, right? That's exactly what we get when we're developing those systems, right? We are finding the problems there, and your answer would be, you would be getting something like, until and unless we'll find some problem, when you report something, then we will analyze it, and then we will see what to do, and then we will create the regulation around it. I don't think so that's the right approach. I think that needs to be changed, and it's about the mindset. If we create more awareness, what you mentioned is clearly the message that if we create that conversation, just started now, because we are going to just see more and more of, right now, if I have Amazon Echo, I would not even plug in, because I know the concerns and issue. And you would not, because if there is a microphone in any of the things, you don't know what it's listening to, right? So that's one of the simplest examples. So it's all up to us how we are taking responsibility, and everybody is looking for who is taking care of that responsibility. And I think that's where the main problem is with IoT. Because earlier we had centralized systems, somebody was taking care of it, had some sort of responsibility attached to somebody. Now it's just a question mark. It's the regulator, standards, or the person who is taking care of it, or the who is creating. So I actually recently did a work on Nest has a baseline for IoT manufacturers, and it was more about informing how it's different than IT manufacturing, and what are some of the things that you need to comply with, so that when you are manufacturing them, that means in the design phase you are incorporating, at least maintaining that baseline, is that you're not going to see some sort of common IoT problems that we already see today. So that is like going to raise a little bit of the standard what we are having today.
No, that's a very good point. And actually, in a couple of weeks' time, I'm going to be speaking to a federation of project managers, right? And these are non-IT people who are, generally speaking, in charge of sprints, agile developments, product developments for different types of things. And the recurring trend is they all get caught at the end by security, at the end, where, hey, you don't have your documentation straight, you haven't run risk on these vendors, you haven't run this risk on these cloud vendors. we have to stop this, and now you're going to add like 6 months to the project, and people just get caught. So to your point, this is a very, very real issue, the awareness one, to make sure that every step within this development, whether it be DevOps or waterfall, doesn't matter. You have to have a modicum of understanding of the security that's being built in. So let's stay with you for a second, Ikjot. When you start thinking of because you mentioned in the course of your discussion, operating systems and resilience of operating systems, these systems, they have more compute than they've ever had, right? They say there's more compute in your cell phone than there was in all the Apollo missions put together, and they got to the moon, right? Kind of thing, or at least orbited the moon for a period as well. Now, you've got a general purpose processor with a relatively general purpose operating system in place, like embedded Windows or VxWorks or Linux or whatever the case may be. But you have no way of knowing what version it's at as a user or as a consumer. You have no way of knowing whether it's secure or not. And so patching it or doing operational examination of the security of these systems has been basically impossible. What do you do if you're a practitioner? Like, what do you do when you've got a like a tsunami of these devices that just present themselves at your front door?
You actually presented an example which is advanced. I would say let's get to something which everybody uses, home routers, right? We put them and nobody knows and you cannot update it, right? It cannot upgrade itself. It's not automated. And the person or the user, layman, they don't know what kind of version it is and how to find it, how to attach it and what script to run and what to do, right? So that's I think, something that we all use for a long time now. And if we need to upgrade, I think it needs to the person who is tech savvy then can go, and nobody else cares. There was an issue with the routers, right? But who cares for that? Because there is a awareness issue again. And then when you come with I think embedded system is one of the things I would say that, because the work that I was closely working with, it was embedded systems as well. So that's another problem when you put something in a chip, let's say, and I will take the example from auto sector again, because there's a life cycle or a lifetime for that particular device. So nowadays phones are, if there's Apple version new, you're just going to get that, right? So it's like that life cycle has gone, a lifetime is smaller relatively than what we use, and maybe other types of IoT. So let's say it's a vehicle, and it's going to have a lot of sensors and chips over there, and all sort of IoT devices within that too. So now it depends on the life cycle too, right? Or the lifetime. So you build something and you put it over there. First of all, it's the lifetime. And if you are not going to change that design and there is no way to upgrade it, I think that itself is a main problem. Itself is a vulnerability, right? So I think these are some of the things which needs to be addressed in the early phases, as you mentioned, because I also think it's a blind spot issue that you just don't care, and we don't have perspective when we are building things, and unless it's in the field, then we get to know, okay, this is vulnerable because we have built the system in a way that when it interacts with other systems, there is a vulnerability.
So let's talk about standardization, because I think that's a big chunk of what we're missing here. You've got organizations like the FCC, UCC certification, CSA, Canadian Standards Association, homologation, all this jazz. This applies brilliantly to radio frequencies. This applies brilliantly to electronic emissions, magnetic fields, all of this stuff, but there's nothing for cybersecurity. Andreas, this is right up your alley, man. How do we fix this?
Well, I think standards are very important to promote innovation in cybersecurity, and really the onus is for the cybersecurity society or the people that are involved in cybersecurity to be part of the governance process to make sure that we get to the point where there are standards in place, because it's only then that we have some guidance to move from. I was likening it to, let's say we would start to invent vehicles from nothing to driving 100 kilometers an hour. and there will be 15 different kinds of vehicles with four different kinds of setups for wheels, different widths, with or without airbags. A lot of people would get hurt, and that's the difference. Automotive has seen a long evolution of the vehicle, while IoT has seen a very quick implementation, and so the governance side is, I think, is very important that that follows the development.
Ikjot, do you have any thoughts on standards and standards associations? I know in California they came out with a very loose standard for IoT devices, like you need to have a default password and a bunch of weak sauce. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are that ANISA has worked closely on this one, and I think I have read some of the reports on that too. But if you see overall as a standard, I think it's a requirement, but it's a really tricky where I think it's not coming in fruition, and it's taking slower than the evolution of IoT itself. So we are having technology upfront ready, and people are just, it's commercializing while there are no standards and oversight. And I think there's a big question on oversight as well. Do we need regulators? Do we want interference from the government or not? And if not, then that question would come in for jurisdiction. Definitely, that one of the major problem is when you deal with IoT and it's all-time active network, how do you deal with it when it's in the one part of the world and then it's being attacked from the other side? So I think there's a lot to deal with there. Not just the standards.
I agree. Well, I mean, to your earlier point, right? It's everybody's problem, and yet it's nobody's problem at the same time. And who's right? Right? Who's right?
I think it's the sense of responsibility and it's the ownership. And in the end, I get out this question a lot with the data privacy and issues on the vehicle. Whose data it is? It's user's data, or with the OnStar and the GM, is it GM's data? Who is taking care of that data, right? So I think
in Europe, it's your data.
It's your data, right? So I think it's the ownership which is in the question. So as much as user is going to be aware of this, there will be more conversation, and then there will be more sense of responsibility so that we can make some changes, because it was not until now that we were even talking about this.
So Andreas, I'm going to ask you an impossible question. Is it the government's responsibility or the corporation's responsibility? So is it the innovators that responsibility, or does it have to be regulated? Because regulation stifles innovation, but with no regulation, innovation goes rampant. So you need to figure this out. Let's hear your answer.
Right.
Right here, right now. Let's go.
Right now, yeah. I think some governance is important. I think laws should, help innovation and not stifle it. But also, as with anything, I think if we are going to be united in creating these IoT devices, it would be good if we have some standard as far as my likeness to vehicles to what is the direction that we're going into. So I think some guidance and some help from our governments. I think there's the Digit Act that is being pushed through the US government right now. That was started in 2015 after the GPAC. But that's taken a year for the House to go through. I mean, they have other things to worry about the next coming week, but I think the government's roles are to also to protect the consumers from and set up the rules that are in conjunction with the industry. So the industry has to be part of it to guide the government.
So I'm going to jump on something you touched on earlier on, specifically 5G, right? So 5G is coming. Well, it's actually already here, right? Depending on who you talk to and what networks you talk to. Brian already ordered his iPhone 12, right? So he could take advantage of the 5G network, right, Brian? Oh, you're still on mute. I just called you out.
Yeah,
but,
that's a Christmas gift.
It's a Christmas gift. Make sure you get one for everybody in your family, otherwise it'll be a target of malware. But I'm not even going to tell you the story of what happened when I got AirPods. They disappeared. My daughters ran off with them. So anyway, I'm not even going to go there. So it's coming. It's already here in a lot of part of the world. And with this, we talked about the deluge, the tsunami of all these devices. There's so many devices, they're everywhere, we get it. Now with 5G, they're going to be 50 billion devices. The internet. They're all going to be connected at 100 megabits per second. So let's start with you, Ikjot. Let's talk about the benefit. The benefit's fairly clear, but the risks of 5G, you've got to have at least in mind some of the risks that are associated with this technology.
It's just funny that when you just switched from what are some of the good things about it? No, let's talk about risks.
It's nothing good about
That's exactly how I think. Like when you work in security, you are not able to think about good things. You just think about how somebody can break it and then just think about that and then fix it, right? That's really good approach. So with 5G, I think in my domain, it's actually impacting so much because there was some sort of frequency which was dedicated for V2V communication, vehicle to vehicle, right? With this disruption coming with 5G, it just changed whole scenario, which was saved for 20 years. It just changed everything, and now it's going to be CV2X, which is cellular V2X because of 5G network. So there is a whole debate going on since last year. And if that's going to happen, then what it's going to change entire protocol stack, and it's going to, I think, increase and just what numbers you are reflecting. I think if you introduce it to auto industry and throw them, half of them in auto sector as well, like on the vehicle, then we are going to have just many more. Because then with CV2X, you have such number of applications that you can create with cellular V2X because you have 5G, and then you are using same, now it's not just your phone that you are using to download, it's your entire vehicle. So now you have so many things that you can do with it, right? And that's what's going to happen in that area that I can see. It's opportunity on one side, but a total risk, a big risk, because there is no regulations and standards and how you're going to maintain it and how people can develop, right? But it's the secure software design, which is the major problem in the auto security that we deal with. So that's what I can touch on the 5G side, because I have the knowledge from that area.
Well, the good news is Andreas has got it all figured out from a regulatory perspective. Andreas, what are some of the threats and maybe some of the risks, but maybe some of the non-evident risks that 5G brings up?
Well, I was just in a conversation with a friend of mine who is a leader on the operator side in Europe, and he was very positive. But I think he was very positive about the safety of what you can do with 5G. I think the immediate risk with 5G networks is not 5G, but it could be the legacy networks for 3G and 4G that are still in circulation. And that will take another 10 years until this is kind of cleaned up. While the 5G standards are set by GSMA, the Global System for Mobile Communication Association, operators can deploy 5G networks and potentially expose vulnerabilities by either making mistakes or cutting corners and cutting costs. But I think some of the for 5G networks, operators have increased ability to tailor the networks for IoT devices through network slicing concept to isolate networks and traffic. So I think the 5G network capabilities to utilize bandwidth and frequencies more specifically or critically to the device's specific use and security protocols will make networking more secure, actually.
Yeah. And I think 5G is one of those things that it'll show you who you are, right? It's a tremendous amount of power that you're giving to these devices. And if there's people who want to do good with it, they'll do good. If there's people who want to do evil with it, there's a propensity for a tremendous amount of evil. And so what I think about when I think about 5G is Mirai. And if you remember Mirai was the first significant IoT botnet that went out probably about almost a decade ago, but probably about 7-8 years ago. And they took down everything. I remember the week that everything went down. Netflix went down, eBay went down, everything went down because they basically went after the DNS the core DNS providers for all these systems. And now you got 5G behind that. You can deliver DDoS. You can deliver a whole bunch of other stuff much more effectively with 5G. So that's a great depressing way to end the panel. But before we end, I got to ask a very selfish question because I'm a super big fan of autonomous vehicles, and I got into a debate with a colleague of mine about autonomous vehicles. Right, autonomous vehicles are terrible. They're awful. They're error prone. They're running over pedestrians every week, kind of thing. What is the truth? I got two experts in front of me. Andreas, we will start with you, and Ikjot, I'll give you the final word. Autonomous vehicles, good, bad, ugly. Which one is it?
Technology is evolving rapidly, which is transforming operations and driving innovation, right? As these IoT devices become more connected and utilized, especially in autonomous vehicles, security implications also grow, and safety for the passenger. I think currently the parts of the IoT and the connected landscape lack basic security standards, and it's a challenge. But also from my business development and commercialization perspective, it presents opportunities for entrepreneurs and innovators to develop solutions. Now, I'm not sure. It's a more of a general statement, but I just came to think of I recently read the Great Reset by Klaus Schwab. He's the executive chairman of the World Economic Forum, and one of the ideas presented is that post-COVID-19, businesses will be subjected to increased government regulations, and if this is inevitable in the cybersecurity sector, it is important that technologists and entrepreneurs also be engaged in the governance process. Now more than ever, innovation is essential in this area of disruption. So I think we have a ways to go until we probably have fully autonomous vehicles, but I think the governance and regulations and the rule books, if you will make that easier. And it will also make innovation quicker because you have a guidance to lead.
Well, Ikjot, please, I want to hear your perspective because it's a very controversial issue, at least in my household.
You know how it is, like we have a kid, if there is a kid, then we don't say it's good, bad, or ugly. It's more like it's evolving. It's slowly increasing in its capacity or competences, whatever we can build, because it's using AI, right? So it needs some data sets, and you want to train it. It's all that we need to take care of. Now, the thing that I would really, really appreciate that whoever is building those little modules, just pay attention and make it securely, because in auto industry, security is going to be the safety of human life. So I think that's where it ends. And I'm also lead for automotive cybersecurity research group. And this is one of those nonprofit initiatives which came just last year, and everybody's now just geeked about it and networked with people. And I think for autonomous vehicles to evolve, and we want it to be secure, right? Definitely. And we don't want to be hacked, or security and privacy are those two issues that it's in IoT all over, and in Internet of Vehicles as well. So I think that's where it ends ever, that all wants to see all different ways, like engineering, electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, how it affects the traffic systems, and also to the person, consumers, telematics. There's so many ways we want to look on that vehicle, not just from the vehicle perspective, but also the supply chain and the government of it. There's so much happening in that area that we want to secure. So I think it's going to evolve, but if you hear about level 3 or 4, that's not here. It's just 2.5. So don't fall for it.
Well, thank you very much for that advice. And I want to take a moment to thank you both, Ikjot and Andreas, for answering my questions. I know they probably weren't as good as some of the ones that the audience can generate. And so with that, I'm going to hand it back to Brian to see if we have time for questions. And if we do, if we can get some audience questions in front of both of you. And if we don't, Mr. Lee.
Sure. Right now it's 7:30 actually already. So, but I do see several great questions from audience. There are actually quite many questions. So if you don't mind, can we stay for 5 more minutes? So, because I don't want to miss those questions. For people online, appreciate you already stay with 1 hour. So why not 5 more minutes to hear some insights here? So one thing I think this is a great question is when you look at IoT, it's not just that device itself, it's more like ecosystems. So things you talk about like 5G, also cloud, because most of IoT also rely on cloud to run all those things. So it's more like ecosystems. So, so how do you protect such a massive things, right? So because we know in cybersecurity, hacker just need one vulnerability can get all the things. So what will be the best practice? Because how do you protect this huge attack surface?
So who do you want to ask that of? Take that.
Anyone can jump in.
Well, I'll weigh in quickly first. I mean, the attack surface is absolutely enormous. So to your point, you have to make sure that you have a platform in place that can be cross operating system, cross protocol, and cross device, right? Understand what you have, and then make sure you have a platform that it can relate to in order to secure it. So that would be my answer. I'll pass it off to Ikjot and then Andreas.
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if I say continuous monitoring, then who would take that responsibility? But that's something I would, and that definitely I would look for. And it's the continuous monitoring we need, not just on the endpoints, but everywhere, wherever possible, on all layers. I think that's what is required so that we can detect it as fast as we can.
Andreas, any?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of responsibility laying on the operators that can now customize the networks a lot more than before. So that could be part of the answer as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, one more question here, because I think Andreas, you put in there related to innovation. So you talk about agility, like all those startups want to put things faster to the market. Right. But as we all realize, and now especially Ajay's presentation highlight a lot of vulnerabilities. So how can we regulate? So on one side, we want to let them faster, like doing things. But are there already some regulations put for this IoT security, which means maybe if you cannot pass certain standard, you cannot release the product? Are there anything already in the market?
Well, there are some standards in the market that are slowly coming. I mean, we have GDPR in Europe. ISO is, I think, just getting their cybersecurity standard set, and SAE for the automotive side at least is a couple of steps behind. So no, I wouldn't say it's a finished race. I think it's still running. As I said, in the US, they're still setting the laws and the Digit Act. So it's not 100% secure, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a long way to go, right? So
it is.
Because at the end of the day, a lot of you still need those regulations that everyone will pay attention to, right? So if there's no such body, then that's a problem. And one more question regarding the home security, right? So although there's an industry, there's cars, 5G, but to most of people, they have IoT devices at home. What about the Alexa? What about the smart monitor? Also, how can we protect the IoT home devices for regular people? Not like we talk about a big corporation, just for regular people. How do we do?
Well, I think the first thing you would do is choose carefully, right? So the first thing I would have, but that's the first answer I would give you. Is like, look, the best price isn't always the best deal, right? Is probably a perspective that I would offer. Make sure you acquire technology, not just your home technology, all technology from a reputable vendor that offers regular support, fixes, etc. The flash in the pan vendor who is here today, gone tomorrow, is basically asking for trouble. The cheapest stuff on the market is cheap for a reason. I think everything is priced. It's like real estate. Everything is priced the way it is for the reason that it's priced that way. So for a home user, deal with reputable manufacturers, apply software patches whenever they're available, right? So check back in, sign up for the newsletter or whatever these vendors will have, because they'll let you know when you need to apply a fix, and stay vigilant, stay on top of it. That's the best advice I can give you. I'll pass it off to Jonathan and Andreas.
Rather than answering, I just want to ask maybe, would you suggest about the automated updates and patches, if available? Because you mentioned about newsletters and just stay updated with the vendor. Would you recommend that?
I would. There was a time in my life as a security practitioner that I was always like, whoa, you got to hang on, you got to test the patches, you got to test the stuff as it becomes available. But as I moved down the path into cybersecurity, for example, I worked at Symantec and other places like that. Do you want to test every pattern file that comes out? You want to test everything? No, because you have to be resilient against the attack. And so, for example, I drive an autonomous vehicle that has two settings for software updates, one advanced and one vetted. And so if you're a Linux person, you have the stable release, and then you have the latest release, or the FCS release of an operating system. I would err on the side of getting the latest stable release automatically applied as soon as possible. So the old Patch Tuesday debacle with Microsoft, just be as rapid as you can in getting those patches on. And unfortunately, trust the quality and the caliber of your vendor, and know that they have QA in place, right? Especially if it's DevOps environment or an agile environment, they have to have the QA in place. It's going to be better than yours, right? It'll be better than my QA at home in my office here. So I would go with the automated patches, 100%.
I think I just want to say and reinforce again, it's the trust in the internet that created the internet at the first place. And if it's going to be Internet of Things, then it's again going to be trust. So yeah, it's a shared responsibility.
Excellent. All right. I just mentioned this was the last question, but here one more. I really don't want to let it go. AI, machine learning stuff, because when we this is, I think, from Farah, the question is, he comment also, if we want to protect so many devices, and we cannot rely on people, just rely on people to work on that. So how can we kind of using machine learning to protect ourselves? Or is that AI the answer for the future?
Who wants to take this up?
Andreas, you smile the most, so you
I would pass it on to Ajay, the more expert in that area.
Well, I don't want to purport myself as an expert in AI. As a matter of fact, AI is one of those industry terms that really upsets me, because I think it's overblown, and I think there's a lot of hyperbole attached to it. But I do think, as you look at the scale and the breadth of the amount of threats, as well as the width and breadth of threats against such a varied attack surface, I think data science, that's the word I would use. Data science and analytics is extraordinarily important. And I realize I have a doctor of computer science on this call, so I'm not going to talk about data science and analytics in her presence, because I'm going to make an idiot of myself, or more so. But the reality of it is you need to apply data science to this. The data lake, so data lake is, think of it an aggregation of all the security information into one big data lake. You need to be able to mine that data lake for trends, for different kinds of movements, for different kinds of analytics, for different kinds of topics, or whatever the case may be. It's all going to be in that lake. You just have to have the smarts to extract it. And so when you start building out algorithms, which is really what AI is, that's where we are with AI right now. We don't have self-aware computing yet, at least not to my knowledge, right? Where we are right now is having the algorithms in place, and there's mathematically sanctioned algorithms. I love AI vendors, because the first thing I'll ask them is, oh, which algorithm are you using? Right? And then they'll be like, well, we're using AI. Like, well, no, what AI algorithm are you using? Like, oh, no, yeah, we don't know what you're talking about. So the long answer to a very short question is there is a necessity for deep algorithmic mathematical data science that has to be applied to an ever-growing data lake. There it is.
It's awesome. Yeah, I would just, again, reinforce what he said, but reword it in a way that if we are having IDSs already, intrusion detection system and prevention systems, why not make them intelligent using data science and just make it more and more intelligent with the continuous monitoring? I think I just tied up 3 different things. And that's what I would say, that that's how we should be using data science, while the trends that we usually see, we can just put it over there and we can monitor and then can detect it faster. I think that's what we have been doing in our Internet of Vehicles again, but it's just so much challenging to develop that on our own, right? As of now, because we don't have data sets. But if we have those data sets, then why not apply it and make that IDS intelligent? And I think that's a perfect use case.
Wonderful. All right, let's wrap up today's session. So first of all, thank you very much, Ajay, Andreas, and Ikjot. So you share your insights with all of us. Really appreciate your effort and the time. So also for people online, thanks for spending time with us. And I'd like to ask everyone give a virtual applause to our panelists and the speakers. So hopefully we can see you very soon after this one. In the meantime, before we finish that, I'd like to ask each of you just 1 or 2 sentences. So you want to kind of like your departing comments, right? So what kind of advice or tips you to our audience today? You can start with Ajay. So 1 or 2 sentences. What kind of things you want to highlight?
So I want to, the sentence I would leave everybody is you should buy Armis and buy a lot of it because it's awesome.
Great.
That and stay safe. Look after yourself. Look after your family. Do the right things. That is the most important thing. Armis is amazing. You should buy it. Great, whatever. AI, we talked about it. Autonomous vehicles, like, no. Stay safe. Be well. Please.
That's great. Good. Ikjot, what's your comment?
Yeah, definitely stay safe and stay educated. I think we need more awareness, and I find myself reading more and more. As I never used to watch that much news, but I ended up watching more and more news because you want to stay updated what's going on, and it's not just COVID, but other repercussions what's happening along with COVID now. And since you're in cybersecurity, you might be dealing with something regarding IoT. That's what we discussed. So, because in the end, it's if it affect anyone economically or in any way, it's going to affect people, right? So, as you mentioned, Ajay, in the beginning about Sajjan, the minister, right? So he mentioned it. So it's a responsibility again. So let's take that and educate ourselves.
Excellent. Andreas, well, what's your comment there?
My comment is that I've learned a lot from my fellow panelists and you as well. And I think I'm very excited for the future in cybersecurity, because I think once we start to discussing on multi-platform, not just the technology, but also in society, and discuss it in all kinds of terms, then we will see a mature industry that will then accelerate and create very interesting things. So I'm very excited about the future, and keep innovating.
Excellent. And by the way, OCE is, I also collaborate with OCE quite a lot. So yeah. Also, like Andreas said, OCE is dedicated to boost the innovation in Ontario, 5G, cybersecurity. There are so many things I really encourage you. And also you saw Andreas' contact information at the virtual wall.
Of course.
Feel free to connect. And Ajay is a leader in Canada for Armis. So if you have more IoT related solution product question, feel free to reach out to Ajay and his team. And Ikjot is expert and also in University of Windsor. So if you need more insights about, it doesn't matter, it's a cars, security, AI. So she will provide you more research insights there. And if you want to join more of a cyber tech risk events, feel free to check out our website. All right, with that said, thank you very much for joining, and I hope you have a great evening. I hope to see you very soon.